Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's honestly going to change how you look at screen time forever. We're taking a look at a perceived distraction, video games, and exploring how the science actually proves they are incredibly powerful, hidden language learning tools. Let's see how leveling up in a game might literally mean leveling up your brain. But first, I want you to just think back to your school days for a second. Have you ever frozen up when trying to speak a new language? You know, that totally relatable, sweaty palmed fear, right? The teacher calls on you, the whole class turns to stare, and suddenly, poof, every single vocabulary word you've ever memorized just completely vanishes from your mind. It's a universal experience, and as it turns out, it's actually one of the absolute biggest hurdles in language education. Section 1, the language anxiety problem. Why we stay silent. To really understand this barrier, we have to look at a specific metric that researchers call willingness to communicate, or WTC for short. WTC essentially measures a person's readiness to enter into a conversation at a particular time. Crucially, it measures that exact split-second moment a student chooses to either speak up or stay completely silent because they're just too anxious. High anxiety leads to low WTC. And what does that mean? Well, it means the student gets zero speaking practice. This brilliantly illustrates the core issue when we put these two environments side by side. On one hand, the physical classroom often brings a real fear of making mistakes, plus forced participation. But on the other hand, the digital gaming world, it offers avatar anonymity, totally voluntary collaboration, and immediate feedback. It's a massive shift from a high-stakes, stressful environment to a low-stakes, engaging one where mistakes are, well, just part of the game. Section 2. Enter the virtual classroom. The unexpected solution. So researchers studying youth in Sweden looked at what they call extramural English, which is basically just a fancy way of saying out-of-school contact with a language. They found that kids were willingly immersing themselves in massive multiplayer games like World of Warcraft, single-player simulators like The Sims, and just constantly interacting on voice and text forums. And the default language for all of this? English. And here is exactly why they feel so safe doing it. As researcher James Paul G. points out, games offer a projective identity. When a learner creates an avatar, that avatar essentially acts as a psychological mask. It completely shields them from the real-world embarrassment of making linguistic mistakes. Think about it. If your level 50 wizard uses the wrong verb tense in a chat box, it doesn't hurt your real-world ego. You're protected by the screen, which, as a result, dramatically increases your willingness to communicate. Section 3. The science of game learning. Mechanisms of play. Okay, so we know they feel safer, but how does the actual learning happen? Well, according to researchers Kinsey and Joseph, there are 6 distinct modes of play. We've got active, explorative, problem-solving, strategic, social, and creative. And what makes rich multiplayer role-playing games so spectacular is that they use all 6 of these at the exact same time. By forcing players to collaborate to solve complex, strategic problems, games drop learners perfectly into what psychologists call the zone of proximal development. That's that sweet spot where a task is just challenging enough to force you to learn, but not so hard that you just throw your hands up and quit. To see this concept in action, look no further than a modified version of the massively popular game Ragnarok Online. Researchers in Thailand actually took this commercial game and modded it specifically for 30 university students learning English. To complete their in-game quests, the students literally had to communicate with the non-player characters, like this guy here named Austin, and with each other, using the English they had learned in class. The absolute beauty of this setup is something academics call incidental vocabulary acquisition. Put simply, it's learning by accident. See, these gamers aren't trying to memorize flashcards. Their primary goal is just to slay a monster, finish a quest, or heal a teammate. They learn the language naturally because it's a vital, absolutely necessary tool to survive and win the game. Section 4. Global Studies in Action. The data reveal. Now, remember our metric from earlier, willingness to communicate? In that Thai university study, when students were sitting in a physical classroom, their WTC was remarkably low, averaging just 11.67. They were incredibly anxious and reluctant to speak. But in-game, that number skyrockets to 19.23. The difference is statistically massive. Once they moved from the physical desk to the digital world, their confidence to communicate just absolutely exploded. But does this increased confidence actually lead to measurable language proficiency? Well, that's exactly what a second study set out to answer. Researchers tracked 86 young learners in Sweden, aged 11 to 12. mapping their out-of-school gaming habits to see if the time they spent holding a controller actually affected their English vocabulary and reading comprehension. And wow, the Swedish data revealed an undeniable pattern. Non-gamers scored the lowest on English proficiency, and moderate gamers scored right in the middle. But the frequent gamers, those playing 5 or more hours a week, they significantly outperformed everyone else in English vocabulary and receptive proficiency. So the data is crystal clear. The more they played, the higher their language skills leveled up. Section 5. The Future of Language. Redefining Distractions. When we pull all these studies together, it completely reframes how we view digital entertainment. It's captured so beautifully by academics Laufer and Holstein, who describe it as learning without an intent to learn, when the learner's primary objective is to do something else. The most profound, most effective, and stickiest learning often happens when it's completely hidden inside a highly engaging, motivating activity. Which leaves us with a totally fascinating question to end on. If these massive virtual gaming worlds can secretly teach us how to confidently communicate in a new language, what other daily distractions in our lives are actually hidden classrooms just waiting to be utilized? Seriously, think about your own digital habits for a second. I really hope this explainer challenges you to look at your screen time in a completely different light. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.